Welcome to Arlington Public News. I'm Brenda Mahoney.
And I'm Paul Werlin. Thanks for joining us. In this edition of APN, we remember State Senator and Arlington resident Ken Donnelly.
He would always light up when he talked about bringing his grandchildren ice fishing up north.
Plus, can 3 new residential bylaws construct a good neighbor agreement?
What do air control surfaces, goosebumps, and electromagnetic impulse shields have in common? They're all projects of the Ottoson Science Fair team. We'll explain. That and more next. Please stay with us. We begin our newscast with the passing of Senator Ken Donnelly. Arlington's 66-year-old senator died after an 8-month battle with brain cancer on Sunday, April 2nd.
Ken Donnelly served Arlington and surrounding towns in the Senate for 8 years and was a Lexington firefighter for over 30 years before that. He was a frequent guest on ACMi and APN programming. James Milan joins us in the studio now. More in the snapshot.
Senator Donnelly was an advocate for many, standing up for workers' rights, mental health and substance abuse initiatives, and civil rights for all. One of his last tweets called on residents to vote in Arlington's town elections on April 1st. At their meeting this past Monday, selectmen marked his passing with a moment of silence. New Chair Joe Curo spoke of Donnelly's 8 years of work in the Senate and how he balanced his advocacy with family life.
I think we in Arlington owe Ken a great debt. He was very committed. He was committed to the young and the old. He was committed to the little guy, and he was committed to, one thing that he was particularly committed to was to battling the scourge of mental illness. He won for this town several years over, in conjunction with his legislative colleagues, 6-figure support for the Arlington Youth Counseling Center. He would always light up when he talked about bringing his grandchildren ice fishing up north. He always made an effort to make their special events like First Communions and such.
The public is invited to pay their final respects to Senator Donnelly at Town Hall on Friday, April 7th. Calling hours are from 4 to 8 p.m. And in election news, the snow and a lack of major contested races kept many away from Arlington's recent town elections. According to Town Clerk Stephanie Lucarelli, just under 9% of 30,000 registered voters cast ballots on Saturday, April 1st. And that compares to 15% who voted in last year's annual town election, where there were contests for the Board of Selectmen and School Committee. ACMi was there to carry the results live as they came in. 2 precincts saw hotly contested races for town meeting members, Precinct 7 in East Arlington and Precinct 15 in the Stratton School neighborhood. 3 incumbents in that district, Precinct 15, were voted out of their seats. It also saw the most voters, just over 1,400, as a total of 8 candidates were vying for the 4 available town meeting seats. Precinct 20, on the other hand, saw only 3 candidates running for 4 seats. So write-ins were also counted and will determine a 4th seat winner. All results are preliminary and must be verified. That's it for this edition of Snapshot. Back to you, Brenda and Paul.
Thanks, James.
You know, Brenda, Ken Donnelly was a frequent guest here at Arlington Public News, and the thing that struck me the most about him is he was just a regular guy. He was a politician, of course, but he was so approachable and personable.
He was, and he was a true advocate for everyone, for working people and civil rights, and he was always in the Patriots Day Parade, and he would come to any event, not as a politician, but as a part of being a part of the community. So he truly will be missed.
And donations can be made to, I think,
Arlington Youth Counseling
Yes.
Center as well in his honor.
Thanks, Brenda. Turning to other news, as Arlington tries to balance its residential construction boom with the preservation of its established neighborhoods, 3 warrant articles attempt to create a good neighbor agreement. Zach Merchant reports.
Change may be coming to the way that Arlington residents interact with home builders here in town. After some residents have complained that the projects have become far too disruptive, the Arlington Redevelopment Board has come together to produce a slew of new bylaws to hopefully address the issue. Their goal? To address 3 major pain points: noise, mess, and disruption.
Neighbors saw us and descended on us. And it really kind of drove home how eager they were to have somebody to talk to and somebody to hear their concerns.
A huge issue was no notification.
people felt that these projects were just sort of being dropped on them and they had no idea that it was coming.
An ARB-sponsored survey revealed that almost 60% of respondents were never notified of upcoming construction, and nearly 70% who raised concerns never had them addressed by the town or the contractor. Under the new bylaws, once builders filed their building permits, they'd have 7 days to inform site neighbors of the upcoming construction, as well as the detailed timeline for its completion. They'd also need to carefully manage daily waste and secure construction materials in non-obstructive locations, among several other measures included in what ARB members are calling the Good Neighbor Agreement.
The construction agreement is pretty straightforward and nothing out of the ordinary. Many other cities have arrangements like this, and we looked at some before we drafted ours, which we're calling the Good Neighbor Agreement, because it's really just about sort of basic courtesies, if you will, that a developer should show to abutters and neighbors when they come into a neighborhood.
Still, town officials recognize that there are limits to their power to regulate construction on private property. Economic and legal forces both work to restrict what the town can do.
The issue of tear downs and construction of larger houses is not confined to Arlington, obviously. This is, the world today. The Northeast is doing pretty well financially compared to a lot of areas of the country, and people are building big houses.
It's got to have to be reminded that people have a lot of ability to do certain things with private property. And I don't want that tone to overwhelm your message. I just, it's important to highlight that you guys have really, and it's in here, you guys have really thought very creatively about how to best address these issues. You've sought information from the survey, you've gotten great responses, but you're also dealing with, the realities of what we can do with town bylaws and what we can't.
As Arlington continues to grow as one of Boston's most desirable suburbs, construction is likely to continue. Figuring out how to balance the concerns of its citizens and the needs of its developers will be an ongoing challenge. But if the ARB is right, these bylaws will make things just a little bit easier for both parties. For Arlington Public News, I'm Zach Merchant.
The public was invited to share their views on the proposed bylaws at a public forum. Arlington Public News will bring you reaction from that much anticipated meeting.
3 town meeting warrant articles are designed to make it easier for seniors, veterans, and the disabled to stay in their homes through property tax relief. Several cities and towns have begun tax work-off programs under a recently passed Massachusetts law. The first 2 articles would allow seniors and veterans to volunteer their time and talents, receiving property tax relief in return. The third article would set up a fund for tax relief through donations, similar to the scholarship donation option already in place. Susan Karp, director of the Arlington Council on Aging, explains how the programs would work here in Arlington.
The tax relief is really important because in any community, the tax rate and the rising real estate taxes can make it very challenging for any one individual to be able to maintain their residence in their town. So oftentimes they feel that they have to leave because the cost of maintaining their home just for real estate is just too much. So with these programs, we really cultivate that civic engagement, and as a result of that civic engagement via volunteer hours, if you will, you get a reduction on your property tax on your bill. So for the senior work-off program, that's $1,500. So $1,500 is a lot that can stay in your pocket. For the veterans, it's $1,000, and for the elderly and disabled tax relief fund, that's actually a voluntary contribution that town members can make into this, so their neighbors who have financial stress based on a disability or just being elderly, that's an opportunity for town members to be able to give back to those older community members. The nice thing about some of these work-off programs is that we're also instituting a situation where we have a proxy. So if we have an elderly individual that can benefit from the tax relief from that $1,500 real estate tax credit on their tax bill, that we can have an individual that's 18 or above to perform the volunteer work that's involved, and then that credit can go back to that senior. So that's a really nice piece. So again, it's really exciting because we have found every opportunity to bring this forward so that we can continue to chunk away at some of the challenges that our seniors in Arlington face. So thanks for your time.
So that's an excellent option for seniors to be able to work off some of their tax on their property.
I hope that's around when I'm a senior. That'd be nice. I could use some tax relief.
That's good. Well, coming up next, green teams are popping up at schools all around Arlington. Meet the young environmentalists and the Arlington Public Schools Sustainability Coordinator, who's working with them.
And future scientists share their research at the Ottoson Science Fair. That and more when we come back. Have you ever worried about your backpack being pickpocketed in a crowd? What if there was an alarm that lets you know when someone opened a zipper? Does athletic prowess help mental acuity? Could a Rubik's Cube hold the answer? These are just a few of the questions Ottoson Middle School Science Fair Club members spent the year researching. The students shared their projects recently with family and friends before heading off to the regional competition in Lowell. APN reporters Kelly DiTomaso and Sammy Warkow have the story.
At Ottoson Middle School, a group of dedicated young scientists spend afternoons and weekends working on unique research projects. They are part of the Science Fair Club, an after-school activity focused on furthering the kids' love of science. Students in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team up with advisors to plan and execute their individual projects, with an eye on competing in the state's regional science fair. Ottoson Middle School teacher Dr. Robin Varghese runs the after-school program.
Absolutely. So the journey kind of started in October when we opened up the club, and once a week the students get together and we discuss for the first month and a half topics that might be of interest to them, and we kind of work on the scientific method, understanding, reinforcing what they've learned in class already, to figure out what's a topic that they'd be passionate about. Because this is something that they're going to do above and beyond regular schoolwork.
I had a great experience last year. I actually went to states. So I had a great time last year, so I wanted to redo it again this year. I just like science a lot. I saw the Science Fair Club. It was the only one that really attracted me, and so I went for it.
This year, Vittorio hopes to return to states with his new project working to shield electronics against electromagnetic pulses. Harry Averill worked on another technically complex project.
I've been interested in flight for a little while now. My hypothesis was that if a control surface was on the front of a wing, that it would be more efficient or create more lift than if it were on the back. And it actually ended up, it was incorrect, and the trailing edge control surface created about 33.9, almost 40% more lift than if it were on the front.
Science is really about solving puzzles, which is exactly what 7th grader Ali Reza Merchant explored in his project.
I was trying to find a project that had to do with something that I like, which is Rubik's Cube. And I also play soccer, so I also thought, why not take athletes and non-athletes and test them to see which one would perform better when it comes to doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 moves. Mostly athletes would perform better when it comes to 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 moves. As you can see by the conclusion graph, athletes were higher, then they went lower, and then they went higher. I also noticed something that, so from 3 moves and on, non-athletes would sometimes try harder than the athletes, but they still would get higher times.
While some projects research complicated scientific hypotheses, other students focus on the everyday problems that we all face. Ava Busoni explored the causes of a common phenomenon.
I did what's the most common way to get goosebumps, and I tested 15 people, and I did 3 experiments on them. The first one was a clip from the new Ghostbusters movie, and then they listened to a chalkboard being scratched 3 times for 8 seconds, and then an ice pack went on their neck for 30 seconds, and then they answered a survey on what they got goosebumps on and what they didn't, and how strong they were, and then I found that being cold is the most common way to get goosebumps.
8th grader Tyler Dillabar put a practical spin on his research.
The problem I wanted to tackle was pickpocketing, because I was in a place where pickpocketing is very common, and I realized I wasn't very worried about what was in my pockets being stolen as I was what was in my backpack, because it's always behind you and out of sight, and you can't really feel people poking around in it. And so I wanted to make a way so that when the zipper is opened, it would trigger a little alert basically in the shoulder strap, so I have a vibration motor set up in that.
Middle school students are notorious for oversleeping and rushing into class at the last minute. Victor Chen used the computer language Python to create an app for that.
Last year, I came up with this idea because one morning, I woke up and it was raining outside, so I asked my parents if they could give me a ride, and it was already pretty late, so they were really mad at me for coming up at last minute, just saying can I have a ride? So I thought why not make a code that will tell you whether or not you should walk the previous day, and so the next day you won't have to tell your parents in the morning. You can just tell them the day before.
We're trying to find a project that rings true to them, in their passion. And so for most of them, we've found that there's a reason why they did this project. There's a story behind it. And we find that most compelling scientists, they're passionate about what they do, and there's some reason why.
For Arlington Public News, I'm Sammy Warkow.
The students will have to wait a little bit longer to find out if they move on to the state competition. The regional fair was supposed to take place this past Saturday, April 1st, but unfortunately it was canceled due to the bad weather. The fair is rescheduled for April 28th. APN will bring you the results. We wish them the best of luck.
Shopping bags made out of t-shirts, stuffed animals turned into car seat padding. Just some of the things children are learning as part of the Arlington Public Schools recycling program. The school system recently hired a sustainability coordinator to oversee those efforts and get more students and parents involved. APN caught up with Rachel Haveri and some Green Team students at Arlington's Recent Civics Day to learn more.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing here today.
Yes, today at Civics Day, it's so exciting. We're doing a t-shirt hackathon, and what that means is we're turning old t-shirts, old worn t-shirts, into reusable bags. So kids and families can go to the library, the grocery store around town and have a nice new reusable bag out of a t-shirt. So it's really showing how you can reuse your textiles. All the schools are recycling. That's a town mandate to recycle in all the school buildings. So they all are doing that. Composting is newer, the food waste reduction, and so right now there are 3 schools that are doing that.
What's the most important thing that people should know about recycling?
I think it's what you can recycle. You can recycle plastic bags, but no curbside recycling. But at the supermarket.
We went in early February to North Andover, to where the incinerator is, and so we did an audit and collected from all the schools, and it was a little over a ton and a quarter per day in all the schools. So that's about the size of an American bison, so that was a good visual for some of the school children to hear about. Almost all the schools actually were one short, but they're about to start a green team, so all of them have some kind of environmental club or green team, and they're very active at all the schools. And there's often activities right now. We're doing a big textile recovery campaign at all the schools, a big competition.
The things that we gathered, we're going to we're going to donate, and they're going to take it apart, and they're going to build them into new things.
We'd love for our parents to be involved. There are usually green team organizers at all the schools, and that's often on the school website or the school newsletter. They can connect to the green team organizers.
On the day APN visited, the Pierce School Green Team had collected over 300 pounds of recyclable textiles. They expect to top 1,500 pounds by the end of the challenge. And the winning school will be announced April 10th. We wish them all good luck to all of those competing. For more on town and school recycling efforts, you can check out arlingtonma.gov/recycle.
More than 600 artists and arts advocates gathered at the Paramount Theater in Boston recently. They were there to collaborate and strategize about arts advocacy and to make sure Beacon Hill heard them. The Arlington Center for the Arts Executive Director Linda Shoemaker was one of them. Reporter Deborah Cardoso has more.
Hundreds of artists and art advocates gathered at the Paramount Theater recently for a march to the State House. The Arts Matter Advocacy Day was organized by Mass Creative.
We marched across the Common up to the State House to meet with our own legislators. We met with our state rep and the office of our state senator and talked about why the arts are important in Arlington. For my part, why the Arlington Center for the Arts is important to me and to our community, and that's really what the day was about for us.
As arts funding is being threatened in Washington, local groups are reaching out to state legislators for support.
So it was a really wonderful bonding, kind of uplifting experience of comparing notes with other people and working together and kind of getting our excitement and courage together to go talk with our legislators and have really wonderful, productive conversations.
The Arlington Center for the Arts depends on program tuition and other revenue for the majority of its budget. But like most nonprofit organizations, they also rely on donations and some state funding. And in Arlington, that comes from the Arlington Cultural Council.
Most notably, things that people may really be aware of in Arlington, the Arlington Cultural Council funded the early years of Shakespeare in the Park, something that ACA has been doing for the last 20 years. But that was initially funded by small grants for a couple of years from the Mass Cultural Council. And that's what that money can do, is to sort of spark a program that will then become self-sustaining and a tradition in the community, like Shakespeare in the Park now is in Arlington.
The day was not only about reminding the State House about the need to fund arts, but also about arts as a community builder.
It was fantastic. There was a terrific turnout from the Arlington community. I think there were about 20 of us from Arlington, a whole bunch of people who, some of us knew each other before we got there, some people were new, and we had some wonderful new introductions. I think the arts can build community in a way like very little else can. Bring us together around things that add life and vibrancy and excitement and poignancy to our collective life in a community.
To learn more about ACA and their upcoming summer programs, head over to acarts.org. For Arlington Public News, I'm Deborah Cardoso.
You know, I think one thing we're most proud of here in Arlington is that it's we really are a proponent of the arts here in town, and the Arlington Center for the Arts is one of the many things that help that here.
That is, and if you checked into our newscast the week previously, we also had a story on how their town is actually trying to build an art scene even more and support the arts here in Arlington. So, yeah.
Why revolutionaries will have to wait a week to commemorate Patriots Day in Arlington this year.
From Ed Burns to John Missouri, passing the torch in Arlington high school hockey when we come back. It's not often that Patriots Day, Easter, and Passover overlap, but this year all three are competing for our attention. Here in Arlington, Patriots Day events have been given some breathing room so we can all enjoy dinner with family and friends and still make it to the battlefield and parade route in time. Mark your calendar for Sunday, April 23rd. Harrison Kramer has the details on what's happening when.
For those eager revolutionaries, a few events remain as scheduled. The Jason Russell House will be offering tours from 1 until 4 p.m. on Saturday, April 15th. Paul Revere's historic ride towards Lexington and Concord will take place on the holiday itself, Monday, April 17th. Mr. Revere will be sounding the alarm at Arlington Town Hall around noon. The following weekend, festivities kick off with the 53rd Annual Fun Run. The run begins at 8 a.m. on Sunday, April 23rd at the Arlington-Lexington Town Line. Participants run 2.7 miles along historic Massachusetts Avenue, finishing at the Arlington Boys and Girls Club. There's still plenty of time to get in on the fun. Visit www.abgclub.org/fun-run to register. At noon, the Menotomy Minutemen, along with the Danvers Alarm Company, Gardner's Regiment, and the Acton Minutemen, face off with the British Redcoats in the annual reenactment of the Menotomy Battle. The battle was one of the bloodiest in the initial days of the war. The event takes place on the lawn of the Jason Russell House. At 2 p.m., the Patriots Day Parade steps off down Mass Ave from Brattle Street to Adams Street. The parade includes marching bands, floats, civic leaders, and many other surprises. ACMi will be bringing live coverage of the parade on the public channel. That's Channel 8 if you've got Comcast, Channel 3 on RCN, and Channel 31 on Verizon. Or you can stream it at www.acmi.tv. For more information on this year's Patriot Day events, check in at www.arlingtonma.gov.
I'm sure there will be lots of excitement around the Arlington Boys Hockey Championship at the parade this year. It's been a long while since the town has celebrated a state win. Today's championship coach, John Missouri, learned from the best, skating for legendary coach Ed Burns. Reporter Matt Case looks at this hockey legacy.
I've been doing high school hockey for 50 years, and really this is the strongest Arlington team, or high school team that I've seen.
Longtime Arlington hockey broadcaster Walter Scott said this of the Spy Ponders before their playoff run began.
I think they could take the whole thing this year.
And with Scott on the call, the Spy Ponders proved him right.
Arlington forechecking. Mike Curran centers it in front. A goal! It went in. Curran just scored again. He centered it from behind the net. It hit Pasquale and went in the goal. So the Ponders have scored. They've won.
Arlington won its first state title in 46 years with the Super 8 championship on March 19th. It is the first public school to win the Super 8 since 2010 and just the third to win it all in the tournament's 30-year history. With a Super 8 appearance last year and a state title this year, a new era of Arlington hockey has opened up, one we haven't seen since the days of legendary head coach Ed Burns. Burns won 6 state championships and 2 New England championships in his 5 decades leading the Spy Ponders. 13 years after his retirement, Arlington's home ice was renamed the Ed Burns Arena. Burns spoke at the dedication ceremony.
I want to thank you terrifically for this wonderful affair, and good luck team. Work your fanny off and back check.
From 1998 to 2003, the Spy Ponders made 5 Super 8 tournaments, but failed to reach the championship game every time. Then came the playoff drought in 2004. 9 years later, in 2012, John Missouri, who played under Ed Burns, stepped into the head coaching position, and in 4 short years, turned the AHS hockey program around.
Coach John Missouri has come in here, and you can see the tactical skill he's applied to the team. I mean, they're in position, they forecheck, they're defensively sound, they're offensively just as strong as they have to be.
Having been an Arlington graduate, he played for Coach Burns, so really has a strong passion and connection with the history of the program, especially when it was at the pinnacle, of the history and the success, which, he was a part of the teams that contributed to why Arlington is so well known for ice hockey. So having that experience, I think, is really important.
Is Missouri the next Ed Burns? Only time will tell. He not only led Arlington to its first state title since 1971, but ended its streak of 13 Super 8 appearances without a championship by finally hoisting the trophy. For Arlington Public News, I'm Matt Case.
Hugging each other and screaming and yelling.
So awesome to be recognized as a hockey town, once again a strong hockey town.
It's quite unbelievable. It's the first time in many years. So congratulations again to the players and the coach.
Well, thank you for joining Arlington Public News as we explore events and issues affecting Arlington. Check out our latest segments on the web at news.acmi.tv.
And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Arlington Public.
I'm Brenda Mahoney. We leave you tonight with the sounds of a student of a piano teacher, Nikon Milani. We're sure to be hearing a lot more from this young man in the future.
And I'm Paul Werlin. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.